this is Mad Movie Marker, the Mad Movie Mark movie review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1980 fantasy adventure movie, The Thief of Bagdad. I think we're going to have a great review today. You gotta at least give me a shot here. I'm watching and reviewing all the movies that have 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll give them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch all of them and score all of them, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at the end of the 1940s with The Thief of Bagdad. So this movie has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and an 81% fresh rating from the audience. It stars Conrad, Veidt as Jafar, Sabu as Abu, June Dupree as Princess, and John Justin as Ahmed. So it was really refreshing being able to watch another movie that is in Technicolor. I had seen The Adventures of Robin Hood and A Star is Born previously in Technicolor, and I thought they were both really fantastic movies and, just a nice change of scenery. This movie, I was also excited to watch it because it stars Conrad, Veidt, who was in The Man Who Laughs. That was one of the movies that I did a while back ago. I think it was in the 1928 is when he did it. It was a silent movie, and now he has been able to make the transition to talkie movies, which I think is amazing. So I was really delighted to see him in this movie. So when this movie starts, we meet Ahmed and his dog Abu. He is blind and he is a beggar, and he is telling a story about when he was once the prince of the lands.
There was once a king, son of a king and of 100 kings. His subjects countless, his wealth untellable, his power absolute. And this dog was not a dog, but a youth who lived in Baghdad and became dear to the king.
And he had kind of a second in command named Jafar. They are witnessing a beheading, and Ahmed kind of goes into a speech about his life and about why is he watching these people be murdered? Do these people have to be murdered? What's kind of the meaning of life? Why is he doing all this? What's the point? And Jafar says, well, because you need to have their respect so you can rule all the lands. And Ahmed's like, well, do I really want to rule the lands? I don't really know what I want to do here. This sort of being king thing doesn't seem like something I want to do. And Jafar says, I have an idea. Why don't you go pretend like you're one of the people and go into the city and kind of see what these people are and what they have to offer. So Ahmed says, yeah, that's a great idea.
One night, when darkness falls, leave your palace, go among your people, mix with the crowds, go into their houses, listen, observe and remember.
Tonight, Jaffar.
Tonight, my king.
So the next day he goes and he lives among his people. So once he is among his people, Jafar is able to set into motion this plan where he gets Ahmed captured and put to jail. And then he tells the people that Ahmed is dead and now he is the new king of the lands. While in prison, Ahmed meets a young boy named Abu.
No, mercy, no, not in prison. Don't put me in prison, no.
Ahmed, thief. Cut off his right arm, and then his left. Then his left leg.
No, mercy, no, please, no.
Abu is able to wrestle a key away from the guards, and he uses the key to free himself and Ahmed from prison. Once they are freed, Ahmed tells Abu that he is now that he is the rightful king of the lands, and Abu kind of bows to him and says, "Oh, please." I have stolen and I'm a bad person, but I am the son of a thief and the grandson of a thief, and all of my family before me were thieves.
Tell it now. I'm Ahmed the king. Speak.
Ahmed the king is dead. He died yesterday. There's a new king, Jafar. Mercy, master, I'm your slave. Leave me at least one arm for small stealing, and I'll pay you twice as much in taxes.
What's your name?
I'm Abu the thief, son of Abu the thief, grandson of Abu the thief. Most unfortunate of 10 sons with a hunger that yawns day and night.
After this happens, Ahmed and Abu are bear witness to the princess. Now, no one is supposed to set eyes on the princess except for Jafar himself, but they look and they see her, and Ahmed falls madly in love, head over heels, love at first sight. So he concocts this plan to where he hides in a tree, and once and below the tree is like a body of water, and then once the princess shows herself, he pretends like his reflection, he's a genie.
Are you afraid?
Yes, terribly.
Why don't you run away?
I want to look.
And she looks into the water and she says, wow, I've never seen a genie before. So also she apparently has never seen a reflection in the water before either, because she thinks that it's a genie. He eventually says, oh, I'm not really a genie, I'm Ahmed. I was just hiding in the tree because I find you attractive. She also falls head over heels in love with him, and it is love at first sight for both of them. After this happens, we then cut to a scene with Jafar is meeting with the princess's father. The princess's father is a collector of toys. The toys are mostly all mechanical, and they do different things. One's like a clock, one is like a wind-up thing, and then it plays like a little, almost like a puppet show type of thing, but with mechanics. And Jafar says, you have a great collection here, but it's almost complete, but not quite. And the king, or the princess's father, says, what do you mean it's not complete? I have everything. I have everything in the lands anyone could want. And he says, yes, but you don't have this. And then he brings out a mechanical horse. And when you wind up the horse, the sultan or the princess's father sits on the horse, and he's able to fly. It's a flying horse. Flies through the air, and he says, I must have this. What do you want? I'll give you anything in my lands. And Jafar says, I want your daughter's hand in marriage. And the princess's father contemplates that for a minute and says, well, you know, I really want that horse, but this is my daughter's hand in marriage. But man, that mechanical flying horse, what I could do with a flying horse. You got it. You can have her hand in marriage. I want the horse. So he gets the horse, and Jafar is promised her hand in marriage. But then we see Ahmed rush in with Abu, and they're like, you don't know who this man is. You don't know who Jafar is. He's an evil person. But before they can get out who he is, Jafar does like this magical spell where he raises his hands like this, and he turns Ahmed blind. And everyone's like, oh my God, he's blind. And then he does the same thing to Abu, but he like says some things and says, you will be a dog until I am able to embrace the princess once again. And he turns him into a dog. So after they become blind and a dog, Ahmed kind of is telling his story to these three women. He says, well, that's what the story is. I'm blind, Abu is a dog, and we're looking for the princess. And the three women say, well, we know where the princess is. She's in her room. She's somewhat dead, but we can't wake her up. So it's like she's dead, but she's only mostly dead, which means she's still somewhat alive. And but she keeps asking for her genie every time we try to wake her up. She says, where's my genie? And Ahmed says, well, I'm the genie. Like, I just told you the story. Remember, I was the reflection in the water, and I told her I was a genie. And the girls are like, oh, yeah, let's take you to her then. So he goes to her, and he is able to wake her up, but then she realizes that he's blind, which is terrible. And he leaves the room, and she's like, oh, my God, he's blind. Like, what are we going to do? And the three girls are like, yes, he is blind, but we know a great doctor who can save his eyesight. So they take her to a ship, and they lock her in a cabin, and then we see Jafar. Oh my God, Jafar is back. Jafar says, I'm sure Ahmed's not going to come around. You know, he's probably dead, and you know, you should just be with me. So then they embrace. And if you remember back when Jafar made Abu a dog, he said, you will be a dog until I once again am able to embrace the princess. So once they embrace, Ahmed gets his eyesight back, and Abu is no longer a dog. So then they meet up, and they decide they're going to get on a boat, and they're going to chase after the princess. So we see their small boat chasing after the princess's boat, and Jafar sees this too. So he gets on the mast of the boat, and he says, "Wind, wind." And then there's this very violent storm, and the ship gets tossed and turned, and, it gets, like a washing machine. And then we see the ship has crashed on this beach, and all we see is Abu. Abu starts walking along the shore, and he sees this thing on the ground. He picks it up, and it ends up being a genie's bottle. And the genie comes out of the bottle, and he says, 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck. Actually, no, sorry, that's the wrong genie. He says, "Oh, I've been imprisoned for 2,000 years, and I have such a grudge. I'm going to stomp you, little boy." And Abu is able to trick him and is able to get 3 wishes. He squanders his first wish on a pan of sausages, and then he uses his second wish, and he says, "I want to know where Ahmed is, but this isn't my wish. I just want to know where he is." So the genie says, "Oh, in order, there's an all-seeing jewel. It's like an all-seeing eye. All you have to do is go and grab it." So he takes Abu to this temple that's guarded by these green men, and he fights off a spider. And he ends up getting this jewel pretty easily. He just grabs the jewel. These green men who have bows and arrows could probably stop him, but instead of trying to stop him, they just let him take the jewel. And he brings the jewel to the genie, and the genie says, "That's it! By God, you've got the jewel. Look inside of it." And he looks at it, and he sees Ahmed wandering the desert aimlessly. So he says, "My second wish is I want to go back to Ahmed. I want to be with Ahmed." So he goes to Ahmed. They have this flying scene, which I'm sure was great graphics back then, but they fly to Ahmed, like the wild blue yonder into the sky.
Set on the shoulders of a genie whose strength is beyond thought. And the genie stands on an eagle, and the eagle on a bull, and the bull on a fish, and the fish swims in the sea of eternity.
And they end up getting to Ahmed. Ahmed looks into this all-seeing eye to see where the princess is, and he sees that the princess is with Jafar, and she's smelling this flower that erases her memory completely. And Ahmed's like, "Oh, why did you give me this dreaded jewel? That's terrible. I didn't want to know that this happened." Abu says, "Oh, I wish you were back in Baghdad with her." And then the genie whisks him back to Baghdad, and that's the third wish. And now Abu's sitting, and he's by himself in this desert, unable to leave. When Ahmed gets back to Baghdad, he meets the princess. Even though her memory is erased, they remember each other, and they remember that they're in love with each other. This, of course, makes Jafar angry, so he sentences them both to death. And then we go back to Abu, who, I'm going to be honest, this part of the movie I don't understand at all. But Abu ends up throwing the eye into the ground, and then the camera tumbles and turns and twists, and basically gets me all dizzy. Maybe it tried to get me dizzy so I don't try to overthink this scene. But then he ends up in this palace, and these guys in the palace say, "We've been waiting 2,000 years times 2 for you," which 2,000. We've waited 4,000 years for you. You are the king of kings or something.
I'm not a prince. I'm only a thief.
For you, we have been waiting twice 2,000 years.
Oh, no, not waiting for me. Because I didn't know I was coming, and I don't know how I've come.
here is your bow and arrow, here is your bows, and have a great day. You will be replacing me as the King of Kings, but I only ask one thing, that you don't take my flying carpet, because I need this flying carpet to fly off into the, into the heavens once I fully retire. And Abu says, yeah, sure, no problem. And then he says, you know what, though? I could really use that flying carpet to get back to Ahmed. I'm a thief, and I steal things, but they asked me not to steal this carpet. Screw it, I'm gonna steal the carpet. So he takes the carpet and he flies to Ahmed, and there's some sort of prophecy, I guess, that one day a young boy of ill upbringing will come from the clouds, and he will come down and he will smite his foes with the mighty bow and arrow. So he comes down on the flying carpet, and he basically smites all of his enemies, including Jafar. And then, the princess and Ahmed live happily ever after. And at the end of the movie, Abu is flying away. He's like, I'm going to go find an adventure. Finally an adventure. And then the movie ends. Scene, curtains, cut. So what did I think of this movie? Well, I will say this is the first movie that ever had a blue screen, and there are a lot of instances, I think, where this movie uses a blue screen, which they probably could have used like actual sets and not a blue screen. I honestly think they overused the blue screen a little bit in this movie. They have like this new technology that they want to play with, and they're just kind of overusing it. And there are places where like the actual actors are blue, as well as the background is a little tint of blue. But I know for a fact that during this time that this technology was like cutting edge, mainstream. I think this movie won the Oscar for best visual, best special effects. And I mean, there's a flying horse in this movie, which I thought they did really well. And I've seen a lot of movies from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, and for this time, these are really good special effects. I'm sure that they are well ahead of their time. So as far as the special effects goes, I'm not going to beat them up too much on that, except for one scene where the genie is flying and he's just clearly like some sort of like toy or model or something that they're flying in the air. Not that realistic, but I'm sure back then everyone really enjoyed it and everyone thought it was great. So visual effects, I will say, are for the time are very good. Obviously now we'll laugh at them and we might make fun of them because they don't age well. But this movie is like, 70, 80 years old. So, I mean, we have to, give some leeway there. The story is really good. A lot of the characters' names, I mean, obviously Disney's Aladdin stole heavily from this movie. I mean, the princess's father looks exactly like Jasmine's father looks exactly like the princess's father. They stole Jafar, they stole Abu, and they even, a lot of the things with the genie they stole as well. So apparently the movie was good enough for Disney to steal from it. But the story is good. I mean, Conrad Veidt as the villain is absolutely amazing. He is very villainous in this movie. You do feel like that the characters are in a lot of trouble, and you do feel like that that maybe they won't get out of this trouble at times. My only really points that I take off of this movie is the acting. The acting is absolutely terrible. I would say everyone but Conrad Veidt is really bad. Ahmed's acting is really terrible. Sabu's is okay, but I would say Ahmed is just one of the worst actors I've seen in a long time. In any movie that I've watched thus far for this list, he's probably the worst. The genie is okay as well, but he doesn't have a lot to do, and he does some maniacal laughing, the laughing that I used for the intro of this review. That's just weird, and it doesn't make any sense. And he eventually says it's because he's going to be free soon. So that's his laugh, his maniacal laugh, is because he knows that there's going to be a third wish used and he's going to be free. But it just seems like it's really out of it takes you out of the scene. And when I saw that part, I didn't think like, I just thought, wow, that's really weird. Why would they make him laugh like that in that scene? It just doesn't flow with the rest of the movie. It's just really bizarre. But besides that, I thought the plot line was good. I really was happy when Sabu met the genie and it was just him and the genie. And then when they're in that temple and Sabu is trying to get the jewel, I thought that was really great too. There wasn't a lot of talking. It was just action. It was like special effects with the spider. I thought it was great. But then once Ahmed comes back in the picture, I'm like, great, like the acting's going to get really bad again. For me, acting is huge, and when there's an actor who's really bad, I kind of lose interest in the movie. And I will say there are a lot of times in this movie where I lost interest. It was hard for me to go back into it. I stopped watching it for a while, then I tried to get back into it again, and every time like I saw Ahmed on screen, I was like, oh man, is there anything else I can be doing right now? Because he's such a bad actor. But given that the special effects were good, the story was good. For that time, I'm sure the story is an original story. It's a bit of a swashbuckler at the end. Ahmed is fighting a lot of people off with a sword. Though, like, there's a weird scene when he's fighting sword to sword and the sword just snaps. I'm not sure metal would do that, so I was a little confused as to why the sword just snaps. But besides that, everything's good. I like Conrad Veidt. We don't know how he has his superpowers. He's just some kind of sorcerer, I guess, who just kind of has whatever powers he wants. We never know like what the like how he got the powers or his source of power. It doesn't really matter. At the end, he's just taken down by an arrow. But this movie's fun. It's fun to watch as long as you can get through the bad acting. When Ahmed wasn't on screen or when he didn't have a lot of talking roles, I thought it was a fun movie. Like, I was having a good time with it. And because of that, I think that it has some rewatchability if people want to rewatch it. Now, I think it was Ebert who said that this movie was to the scale of The Wizard of Oz, and it was like as good as The Wizard of Oz, and I don't agree with that at all. I think that's a terrible comparison. The Wizard of Oz has great acting, it has a fantastic story, it has great side characters. This movie has like one or two like characters in the background and a couple main characters. But for Ebert to say that this movie is of the caliber of The Wizard of Oz, I think is crazy. And I know this movie is beloved by a lot of people. People grew up with this movie, or they watched this movie as kids, or maybe their parents introduced them to this movie. Maybe this is like, for me, The Princess Bride is my favorite movie of all time because I watched it as a kid. I know it's not the greatest movie ever made, but it's my favorite movie because I've watched it a lot. And this is the kind of movie I could see would be like that, where maybe you watch it as a kid and you really enjoyed it, and then as an adult you continue to rewatch it because it has a lot of rewatchability, and you just don't want to hear people to say that it's a bad movie because it's a movie that you just have grown up with and that you love. But in all honesty, once I get past the special effects of the era, once I get past the writing, the movie to me is just it's just kind of average. I hate to say that. The special effects, like I said, are great. I'll be the first ones to say the special effects are amazing, but just the acting is just so bad at times. I just can't get over it. I just can't get past the fact that Ahmed is so bad in this movie. It's because of that I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's kind of high for me, but I appreciate a lot of the things that it was doing. I appreciate the fact that it was the first movie to have a blue screen. I appreciate the fact that they were doing a lot of things, taking a lot of risk that other movies wouldn't take. And for that, I think it deserves a higher rank than what I would normally give. And an 8 is higher than what I would have given had this not been the first to do a lot of those things. So I will give this movie an 8 out of 10. Thank you. I hope you join me again next time when I review The Lady Eve. Have a good day.